How many podcasts have you gone on in the United States talking about this?
Two.
So I just want like, is it possible that this is one of two podcasts so far to date that have shared this message? And so it's not like it's super like there's just nobody talking about this. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Better Wealth Show. I'm here with Louie with Strategic Metal Investments, and we're going to talk about all kinds of fun things. I want to make it very, very clear. I say this every time someone comes on with investments or like cool ideas. I do not endorse any investments. I'm not giving investment advice. You can't sue either of us, but if you're going to sue somebody, sue Louie. Just kidding. And we're going to be talking about big time picture as it relates to a lot of people are asking about gold and precious metals. And Louie, you have some really interesting things to share with us that say, hey, precious metals may be a play. And there's a world where you can, in quote unquote, invest in precious metals that are not gold, not silver, that have a utility that could outperform, but still give you the benefits of gold and silver. And so with that, welcome to the show. I am very much looking forward to this conversation, and I appreciate you waking up or staying up for us, just because I know that you're not in the United States right now.
Thank you, Caleb. Yeah, and if you want to sue me, I'm in Tipperary in Ireland, so it's a bit of a long shot. But yeah, look, it's an honor to be here with you. Look, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would wager that your audience will be hearing about this option for the very, very first time. I know that to be a fact because it previously was not available to private investors.
Yep.
So
I know that for a fact as well, because I usually hear about alternative investments pretty early on. And when we chatted, 2 weeks ago, it was the first time that I was hearing about this. And it was very, very attractive. Before we jump in, can you give a little bit of your background, where you live, how you got involved, big picture?
Sure. So Louis O'Connor, I'm from Dublin originally, but I lived in Germany. I've traveled a lot. My first goal was to travel the world. I grew up in Ireland at the time. We hadn't had any economic prosperity, and we had a lot of immigration, and we had for many years. So I wanted to get out and see the world. So I lived in Germany for about 8 years. And then I went to Latin America. I was in Latin America for 15 years. And I've just recently returned back to Europe, specifically to do this opportunity when it became available. And I'm married, 20 years married. My wife is from Mexico. I have two girls, two kids, born in Panama, but now working under Tipperary Irish accent. So I love to travel. If my wife would let me, we'd be in a camper van just wandering, but she has more sense than me, most of the time. Yeah. So this business, I'll give you the main characteristics, and then I'm sure sort of questions will come up, Caleb. So the best way to describe it is it's the exact same paradigm as owning gold or silver, as owning gold, precious metals. You can, people in North America, I mean, today you could get online and you can buy gold probably in your locality, or you could go to Singapore, you can store them offshore. So it's the same paradigm as that, except the only difference being these are rare earth metals. Now, you mentioned the name of my company I created is called Strategic Metals. Strategic Metals is an umbrella term for technology metals, meaning they're in all modern technology, rare earth elements, rare earth metals. Over in Europe now, we're calling some of them also green metals because they're critical to electric mobility, solar power, wind power. So that strategic metals is an umbrella term, and technically the correct term scientifically is rare earth elements or rare earth metals. So the three characteristics of what we do, what I want to mention first, Caleb, it's very, very important that sort of people understand this as well, because there'd be no point in even considering doing this investment if this wasn't in place. So our primary business is we are a metals broker. We have an office in Frankfurt. We have a vault in Frankfurt, and 80 to 85% of our, excuse me, of our activities are buying and selling metals. So we buy from suppliers, mostly in China, because that's where most of the production is. And we then resell to industry. We're doing that, on a daily basis. In fact, we sell metals to businesses and industries in more than 70 different countries. Wow. Now, why is that so important? Because if we weren't doing that, the investment side wouldn't work at all. Because there'd be no point in you or me or anybody having, say $100,000 worth of indium, which you couldn't swipe your phone without indium. Because what are we going to do when we want to liquidate it, right? Unless we're going to, start making phones or something. So it's very important that people are aware we are an industry supplier, and that's the most important thing about us. Now, just to give you another demonstration as well, is in the vault in Frankfurt, we have more than 200 metric tons of raw materials in our inventory. It's the largest inventory of raw materials in Europe. Only between 20 and 25% of those raw materials are owned by investors. So you can see the ratio there. It's not like we have, 100% of the, you can see how that relates to liquidation and exit. So I'll just give you the three characteristics then with that in mind. So what we, guarantee, if you will, to anybody who partners with us is, one, when you buy the metals, we guarantee you'll get industrial grade, high value assets, that are sort of industry standard with analysis reports, purity levels, case numbers, chain of custody documentation is also very important. So that's the first thing the investor, they physically purchase them and own them. The second thing we guarantee is the storage facility is industry standard. Some of our metals are oxides, so they're the powdered form. So they need certain maintenance, if you will, and storage conditions, so they retain their purity levels and they don't have to be retested again before they're sold to industry. And then the last thing we guarantee is the liquidation. And what's great about this product is they're extremely liquid. You don't need to give us 30 days notice. If you want to, when you want to liquidate, we can liquidate the product in 3 to 4 working days. Why? Because that's our primary business. That's 80% of what we do. So I'll be quiet for a minute, and I'm sure you've maybe
biggest mistake is to let me talk. So I want to take a step back. Rare earth metals. You pulled out your iPhone. Is it fair to say that if you have a smartphone, you are utilizing some type of rare earth metals?
100%. Actually, there used to be 9 rare earth elements or metals in an iPhone. There's now between 12 and 13 in any smartphone.
Okay. And they're just in the ground, and like you said, a lot of them are coming from China. Is there something about the earth in China, or are they just ahead of the curve when it comes to digging for that?
Great question. Excellent. Great question, because the history and the dynamics of China is very important here. So first of all, China has 50% of the world's reserves, but that doesn't mean they should monopolize the market, right? There's rare earths. Some of them are not all that rare. What's very, very interesting is going back now to the 1980s. In the 1980s, the US and China had an equal sort of share. In fact, the US was producing more rare earths, but they both produced about 35% of the world's rare earths. The premier of China made a very bold statement in 1987. He said, the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. And it was a very, very shrewd statement, because fast forward now, and not everybody can explain how and why this happened, but China is the dominant market leader in rare earths. They produce more than 80% of rare earths, and they refine more than 87%. Now, the refining is important. You touched on it there as well, which is rare earths are never, they're found, for example, gallium is always found as a byproduct of mining aluminum. So they're never found individually. They're always a byproduct of another form of mining. So the refining process is expensive and sort of complicated.
And you guys take it after it's refined, and you're brokers, and so you're essentially taking that and selling it to the Apples and the Googles and anyone that's using rare earth. And so that's why you're saying, hey, listen, you can invest in precious metals, but our main business, because this is one of the first questions I asked you, because I come from a very skeptical mindset, or I'm like, okay, and you're like, oh, it's actually just a side business that you guys have access to them, and you also, there's a massive demand for them. And what you're saying is if someone just bought metals, like rare earth metals, and held on to it, it's just like a lot of other assets, it would appreciate. And it's diversified. It's not tied to other, stock market investments or kind of one of those things. But if you guys weren't brokers on the back end, it would be one of those things where it'd be like gold I could liquidate tomorrow. And so there's a market for that. And what you're saying is what makes you guys super unique is not only do you guys allow us to buy rare earth precious metals, which is like good luck trying to find that, number one. But number two is what I think is most important on this list is the liquidation concept. And obviously it's only as good as the promise kind of deal. So it's, it's not like we can't guarantee anything, but that is very attractive. And it's also attractive when we look at right now in 2022, it's like there's a lot of uses for rare earths, I think. And so it's like the demand is not just going to drop off. In fact, I think it's only going to get more and more if my understanding about what this is correct.
Yeah, no, yes, 100% correct. For example, all modern technology, that's not going to go away. That's one of the industries, just one. But if you think, for example, even in the sort of developed and the modern world and the sort of wealthier part of the world, people are constantly buying new, devices and renewing them and getting new ones. You've got the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China. I mean, they're sort of depositing hundreds of millions of people into the middle class. So the demand will continually increase. What's adding to demand now is this sort of unbelievable transformation we're about to go through in how we power our daily lives. 80% of sort of global emissions are coming from how we do that. And we're about to, just some small examples. I mean, every car manufacturer in the world is going fully electric, and you need rare earths for that. So for electric mobility, solar power, wind power, it just couldn't be a better time to be able to purchase and own rare earths. And just as you touched on there as well, like our clients physically own the metals. Once you purchase them, they own them. Now, we do recommend you store them with us because we're an industry supplier and the chain of custody is important. But let's just say, and I had a client recently ask me this from Tennessee. He said, Louis, I like my gold as close to me as possible. I think what he meant was in the backyard, but he said, so I'm a bit skeptical about, having them in Germany. And, that's a fair point, Yeah. So he said, can I actually, take delivery of them here? I said, you can, because you own those metals.
Correct.
However, our product, if you will, is our price is what is delivered to our storage facility in Frankfurt. It's a tax-free bonded warehouse, exactly the same as storing them in Switzerland. Now, if you want to remove them from there, all you're really going to do is incur additional expenses on your investment, which is transportation to Tennessee or wherever it might be. And then the one thing that's tricky there as well, if you come back to us then in 5 years and you're ready to sell them, likely they would have to be tested again, and that's going to cost you, unfortunately, more.
And you have to send it back, right? You would have to send it back to you. So what you're saying is you can, it's your metals. You can take delivery, but it would be your professional recommendation that would not be the most efficient thing for you if you're using it as a way to potentially liquidate. If you just like the fact that you have precious metals and that makes you feel good, you can easily have it be in your own vault in your own house if that's something that you want to do. Just know that the 3 to 4 days liquidation is there's no way you probably could
Yeah,
even get the metals to you in that amount of time, let alone get the cash. So is that
exactly.
yeah, I love
Yeah,
that, man.
yeah.
This is just a question I'm dying to ask. So in my iPhone right now, um, like how much value in the precious metals is there? Like, um, is like, do you could I it's kind of a dumb question, but like, could I smash open my iPhone if I get a new one, and is there metals there, or is it not that easy?
You're the first person to ask me that, Caleb. um, they're in minute amounts, minute
Okay.
amounts, and that's sort of good in a way, and not so good because they're not. It's not relevant at the moment. This moment in time, it's not possible to recycle them because they're in such small amounts,
Okay.
And also, when you sort of, if you did sort of smash it up, as you said, and take it apart, then the purity levels of could be affected. And like
Okay.
to give you an idea, like some of the same metals that go into an iPhone might well go into an F-35 fighter jet, which needs 3/4 of a ton of rare earths. Now, if we're selling those to the U.S. Department of Defense, to them, all they want, what's most important to them is the chain of custody. They know exactly where those metals were produced. They know where they were stored. They know what custody they're in. And then, that's why it would be a difficult industry to break into because, the clients are so, they're so critical and sort of irreplaceable, and the purity levels are so important.
Yep. I just I ask questions like that because when you say rare earth metals, I'm thinking like a diamond is in my phone somewhere, but it's not. It's they're using these rare earths for technology, I believe, like how to swipe and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm way okay by saying that it's above my pay grade. And as long as I understand that there's use, that there's a ever increasing demand, the fact that solar, future electric cars, and technology uses that,
Yeah.
you could make the argument. It's like, what's the utility of gold? A belief. Like that's like we believe that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and scarcity. Like that's and so I'm not saying gold's not valuable, but it's like that's why people put their money in gold. And there's a world where you could have that same scarcity, but you now have a metal that has utility as well. That it
Yes.
would be interesting, and it gives you another option. And I'm a big fan of future options.
Yeah. That's a great point. Great point, Caleb. It gives me a chance to go into sales mode a little bit. But look, there's a gentleman in the US. His name's Jack Lifton, and he's the foremost authority in rare earths. And he said, I was talking to him on the phone one day, and he said, Louis, if all the gold in the world disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't make any difference. If all the rare earths did, the buildings would fall down, airplanes wouldn't fly, cars wouldn't drive. Our clothes literally would fall off our back. We'd be left sitting practically naked in rubble. And that's true. Like that's a fact. So rare earths have an intrinsic value and gold has an extrinsic value, as you said, a perceived value. Now, I've nothing against gold. It is a great store of wealth. However, rare earths are a great addition to any metals portfolio as well. And the demand is always going to be there. For example, I was doing a little sort of a comparison myself on gold versus rare earths. And there was a period, I think in the early 1980s, where gold went up to about, I think, $630. And, it receded, and it didn't reach that again for 20 something years, 24 years, 25 years. So that's a long time. It is a store of wealth. But with rare earths, just to give you an example, say going just for the last 5 years, I think gold is up at 54% for the last 5 years. Our top performer is up 374%. Some of our metals are up 250%. On average, they're probably up between 30 and 40%, on average. Some are up maybe,
Annualized year to year.
yeah, every
Yeah.
year, yeah.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because there's not enough being produced. The demand is far outstripping supply.
So why do you allow consumers like us to buy in when there seems to be like why do you let that? Because it seems like you're making quite a bit of money, and why don't you just keep it for yourself?
Well, we make money too. It's a partnership. As I said, our primary business is buying metals from producers and reselling them, and that's our
Yep.
business. And we'll always do that. And thankfully we will, because that's otherwise the investment side wouldn't work.
Right.
But the investment side creates two additional income streams for us. One is the spread. I mean, you buy the metals from us just like you would, there's a bid ask spread as you would buying gold or silver. So we make some money there in partnership with you. And then the other income stream is the vault. It's a separate business and it's run separately. And so we're basically expanding and diversifying our business.
It's fair. And I'll ask you a couple questions on the detail of that. Right now there's a big green movement and people are like, let's stop drilling oil and let's drive electric and all of that because, I think we can all agree that running out of oil would be a bad thing. Regardless if that we're even close to that or not, that would be a bad thing. What is the chances of us just running out of rare earths? Because it sounds like if and when that happens, we got a problem on our hands.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, again, that's the first somebody's put it to me. There's, as I said, China has 50% of the world's reserves. There's plenty of rare earths in North America. There's also plenty in Europe. There's one plant in the US, Mountain Pass in California, which produces rare earths. But all of those rare earths have to go to China for refining. Now, what you just touched on there, that's why it's such a good time to, the reason I'm about to explain it, now is a very good time to invest, because the landscape will look completely different in about 10 years from now. Because if you Google a little bit, you'll find, in a very rare occurrence of agreement, both President Trump and President Biden both signed executive orders recognizing that the US needs to wean its dependence off China. So there's things in the works for the US to have its own domestic supply chain, and for Europe. But that will automatically they'll do it more sustainably than China. I mean, you're looking at least 25, 30% costlier because of labor costs are higher and safety. But I don't know if you know this, you really touched on something there about supply. There was a movie that came out in December on Christmas Day called Don't Look Up. Have you heard about it? Or?
Yeah, I have my own opinions about that movie, but
Yeah,
I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, but just there's one point of it I wanted to say, and it's very ironic, but funny enough, there's an element of truth of what they said. There are some companies already exploring mining rare earths from outer space, but the premise in the movie was, what was it?
It was like a meteor was going
to comet. Yeah. This comet has trillions of dollars of rare earths. So they can also likely be found under the ocean. So I don't think we'll run out anytime soon.
Elon Musk, if you're listening, this could be something that SpaceX could take to the next level and create another income stream.
I'm sure he's already onto it.
This is fascinating, and again, I want to say, like, it's so tough being in my shoes because I'm hosting a platform and there's tons of people that listen to our podcast, some people that watch on YouTube, and so it's easy to get excited. And what I'm trying to do is, I am super grateful for you taking time to share, but I don't want my audience to just hear the newest thing. We call it recency bias, and say, oh, I'm going to put all my money in this. What I love, though, and what I'm committed to doing is sharing the pros and cons and trying to do my very best to at least introduce people to concepts. And then they'll obviously have an opportunity to chat with you or someone on your team in the future. So let's dive into, if someone was like, okay, I like the system, I like the process of potentially investing some money, I see the demand, the 30 to 40%, if that's like half true, that would be phenomenal. And what you're saying is, you're not giving investment advice, you're not making predictions, but you're saying it's not going to get worse. In the way that you're looking at data, it's only going to get better. That's at least what I'm hearing you say. So what is the process from step by step? And if someone was like, I want to invest, what's the minimum investments? How do they do that? And what are the potential mosquitoes or problems with them giving your company money? Because I'm again trying to do my very best to talk about the pros and cons.
Sure. No, excellent. So let's start with the pros and cons. The pros are you're doing business with an industry supplier with over 30 years experience in the business. And they're, you have to do obviously some due diligence on that, but that's what you'll find out to be true. The cons are, I mean, no different to anything else in the sense that, like I can only give, like what I just quoted you is fact. Those are historical pricing. I could send you independent stuff, but I can't tell the future. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. It is a speculation.
Yep.
What I like to sort of, the best way to explain, I call it a path of progress play, which I think is a term used as well in real estate, which is, before you invest in a country or a certain area or a town, one good idea could be to look at what's happened there in the last 5 years or 10 years.
Right.
And it should give you a good view of what's likely to happen in the next 5 or 10. So what could happen is there could be an overproduction of one of the metals. Or let's say indium, which we discussed, you can't swipe your phone without indium. They're discovering new metals all the time. There was one recently named in Switzerland. They might find a metal that performs better than indium for that particular task, and all of a sudden demand for indium could go down. So that would be sort of normal in that type of industry. I mean, once you do your proper investigation, though, you'll see that, this China, like, it's hidden in plain sight. China is about to come to, in the year 2025, they'll achieve what they set out to do at the beginning of the millennium. They stated what their China futures policy was, and that was to be domestically independent, have their own source domestically for 10 different industries. And these are the industries we're talking about. So any expert in this field will tell you that in the very near future, sometime between 2025 and 2030, the US, Europe, and other developing nations will be basically standing in line, waiting for China to give what they have left after they've, satisfied their own quotas. So, I mean, look, I'm in the business. Obviously, I'm passionate about it, but, it's sort of hard to believe how much opportunity is here, and the historical pricing will show that. Now, the minimum price of entry is only $10,000. And what I recommend, most of our clients start somewhere between 25 and 50,000, and they open a portfolio. What I recommend is start, even, for example, for about $12,500, you can buy 1 kilogram of each of our metals. So you'd have the full portfolio. And, we update the prices every week, and you'd have a performance chart from us, and you can sort of watch the movements, and you can maybe add more of one, or, sell one or something like that. So my recommendation is open up an account, get your portfolio going, and plan to add to it. I mean, you'll see your gains. So usually once people are making money, they're happy to invest more, but for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, it's an excellent investment.
Yep. Do you know if this is another probably question you've never received? Can you lend against the asset? So if I put in $50,000 in precious metals and it's appreciating, and it's my understanding the only way I'm going to realize that appreciation if I sell, and it will be cool because you'll be transparent. I believe I'll see each week what I bought it at 10 and now it's worth 15 kind of deal. That's generalized, but I'll be able to see that. Is there a world, or do any of your clients able to use that as collateral for the bank and say, hey, can I take a line of credit for my 50K so I don't have to sell?
Sure.
Is that something that has been utilized?
To my knowledge, no. But that's not to say it hasn't been done. But yeah, you would have your certificate of ownership, and each the amount of each metal you have is listed individually with the weight you have, the purity levels, the case numbers, the chain. So you would have documentation to show that you do own those metals, and then of course you can find a bank or a lending agent can find. They wouldn't have to look too far to see what the value, independently, besides what you're telling them.
It would be this is a project that I would like, and I'm inviting any listener or people watching this, if you know something or can help us. I think I very much love the idea of investing with access to capital. And it sounds like you could do this with gold. You can do this with, a lot of wealthy people that have a ton of stock options and companies can get people to lend against. And it would be something maybe we can have you on in the future when we have an update on that.
Yeah,
But it
definitely.
is an asset, and so if you have a personal relationship with the bank and you have a banker that's you know that understand like that's willing to go deep and maybe look at alternatives, there's a world where you potentially could use
Mm.
that as a collateral.
Correct, correct. And like you said, if you can do it with gold, then there's a way for it to be done because again, the investors do physically own the assets. They're just they're in storage, but they own them. If they want to come, in fact, I love for people to visit. I mean, before, during, or after the purchase, come to Frankfurt, and I always have an extra day or two to wine and dine people a little bit. The Rhine River is an hour away. We can, in the summer, you can go through the what they call the Weinstraße, which is all the vineyards are up on the side of the river, and take a boat trip. Heidelberg, the oldest university in Germany, is an hour south. So, I lived in Germany, so I speak German, and I love people to come visit because I'll send you a photo if you like, but it's 200 and over 200 metric tons of rare earths
It's
is
incredible.
it's a sight to see. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
I'll tell you this. I'm looking forward to again building a relationship with you, and it would be fun to not only visit you, but it'd be also fun to see if we can get enough people in, maybe we could do a mastermind. And
absolutely,
have you guys be the host, and I think that would be that's something that
absolutely,
potentially. By the way, if you're interested in that, let me know. Because we're just again
yeah.
our community is
Well,
continuing to be built and people are very interested in learning about this because I believe it increases our financial IQ, and that's my goal in this whole show is to introduce
yeah,
people to different opportunities.
yeah. No, Caleb, and look, I would. I'm glad you mentioned that because I would sort of. I'm not appealing to anyone other than you, but anybody's interested could maybe funnel through you. But I have in my mind, I'm sort of interested in strategic partners in North America. Um, the areas where I'm not competent or I wouldn't be knowledgeable would, somebody from California mentioned, this would be great for a sort of a syndication or an investment fund. I said it would be, but I need a partner,
Yeah.
and the other thing as well is I'm in Europe. So, somebody in North America that would know the territory and know the laws and know how to legally set it up. So
Yeah.
any ideas you have, because, what's fantastic, I suppose, about this as well is, the German company, like the metals trader, they're very sort of conservative, 30 years in business. They have done, until I came along and became a sort of a sales partner with them, they've done no marketing outside of Germany, Austria, Switzerland. They haven't needed to. And so there's a great opportunity there for anybody who's entrepreneurial.
Yeah, and Louis, this is such a great example, and I promise you guys, we did not plan this ahead of time. We literally just hit record and said we'll see what happens. But this is a perfect example of what we teach. If like you have access to capital, if you have the mindset of control, if you are doing what we're teaching, building relationships, looking for efficiency, it's like people ask like, how do you have opportunities to do certain things? Like we're launching a tax company, and some of the really cool opportunities have come up with that, and even this, like when we first chatted, in the back of my head was like, if, and don't take any offense to this, but if half of what you say is true, right?
Mhm.
There's a massive opportunity. Especially, I
Yeah,
mean, one, we're recording this. I'm reading a news article that says the Dow dropped 1,100 points, and it's
yeah,
continuing to drop. And so there's a world where people would be like, yeah, I would want to diversify a little bit of my money in there. And there's a world where there's a fund opportunity. There's a world where you could be a representative in the
yeah,
United States. And there's a world where you could take some of your money and I mean, 20, 30, 40%. And again, don't sue me. I'm not giving investment advice. Do your due diligence. Assume that this whole thing's not true. That's like my best investment advice is just assume people are not telling the truth and you'll do your due diligence. But I'm telling you, you came in from a good friend MC, and I've been really impressed with your down to nature, just who you are. You've showed me a lot of what's going on, and it makes sense. And by the way, there's opportunities like this all over the place, but you have to be willing to think outside the box, because Wall Street and other firms can't even sell what you're selling, and
Mhm.
they're threatened by anything that's going to take yield away from their investments.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, you nailed it. And look, due diligence isn't a theory. I mean, it's an action, right?
Right.
But what I'd like to do, Caleb, is after this, I'm going to email you, if it's okay. I'm going to email you for example, the prices I've quoted.
Okay.
But they'll be not from me, like from Bloomberg, if you will. I'm just going to send you 2 quick emails so you can see.
Okay.
But absolutely, people have to, you have to investigate it properly. But you know something, we still live in an age where opportunities come along that we haven't heard about, that are good, proper opportunities. I mean, that will always happen. So when they do come along, the question is, do you know what I find sometimes? There's a sort of a principle that's sort of a bar against all information, a bar against sort of learning anything. And that principle is sort of contempt before investigation. Now, I noticed, it wasn't with you because you sort of zoomed in very quickly, but a lot of times when I'm talking to people and I start to mention rare earths, I can see in about 10 seconds the eyes glaze over and I've lost them, and I just leave it at that, because that's okay, because they've sort of hit a barrier from the beginning. But I noticed with you, just by the questions you were asking me, that you were sort of picking this up, and not everybody will. And even when it's proven to be a great opportunity, some people will just go, it's not for me, and that's fine too.
My investment philosophy is it goes along a framework of value leveraging. And so number one, the question that I have is, if I'm going to invest anything like time, money, or whatnot, am I investing in something that I see the value long term? And clearly, the answer is yes. Like I'll be very frank. Investing in the stock market, investing in gold, investing in other things, it's hard for me because it's like the market, it's supply and demand, and it's all about people's feelings about what they want the company to be worth. You're not investing in fundamentals, or you're not investing in a private company that you're getting, so that's where a lot of yield goes, and gold is awesome too, like great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I love investing in businesses or real estate or things that I'm like, there's going to be a demand 15, 20 years from now. There's going to be a demand, and it has abilities to appreciate. It has abilities. You just have options. And that's why I ask other questions about, being able to loan against it, because my mind's always working that way. But then the other thing, if you really want to maximize your investment, is then you figure out how can we leverage. And this podcast is a form of leverage, by the way. It's like if I'm you, or if I'm trying to promote something, it's like you're gonna get 1,000+ people are gonna hear this message easily, like And so it's like that is one conversation. More than one person's gonna hear this, and that ripple effect is pretty incredible as well. And so, but you leverage without value creation is a disaster. And I find that a lot of people want the quick cash, and we're seeing right now in the markets where if you're investing through greed because you want the quick dollar, it might not end up very well for you. Whereas if you invest in value long term, like there's fundamentals that are also collateralizing the potential downside of what your thought, where you can go.
What's nice about rare earths as well is how liquid they are. So I know a lot of people talk about passive income and stuff. They don't actually provide passive income because you realize your profits when you liquidate. Right. However, you have an appreciable asset. We update the performance chart twice a week. So every week you can see exactly, like let's say you bought all 9 metals, you'll see how much you're up on each individual metal and what the average is. But what I try to let people know, which I think is a key point as well, is if by any chance, we recommend stay in as long as possible, because it's very likely in the year 2030, Western Europe and the US will be just waiting in line for rare earths from China. Like, to give you an idea, 2 of our metals doubled in price last year.
Insane.
Why? Because China doubled their production of electric cars and they needed more for their quota. So the rest of the world suffered, right? And what if trade tensions escalate and China goes, okay, and they've threatened to do this, we're not going to, you're not getting any. Now, what if that happened and you have $100,000 $1 million worth of rare earths in a vault in Germany that you can liquidate in a day. Like if you come to us at the beginning of the day and say, I want to liquidate, we'll send you an offer that day, an official pro forma invoice. If you accept that offer, you'll have been paid out and completed in 3 to 4 working days. So they're very liquid as well. And then one final thing I'd say is diversification. Like if all my assets are in one country and in one currency,
I agree.
I could do with some diversification, some international diversification, you know? So it provides that as well.
I 100% agree. And there's even a world, like I'll tell you where I think the biggest risk is your company's credibility. If you guys no longer become a broker, you maybe lose that fast liquidity, but you still own the asset. And so there will always be, as long as that asset is going to be utilized, there's always a world for that. And so I'm just being like, that's the one thing that you have to, bring up. But the fact that you guys have a 30-year history, there's not a ton of you out there, and majority of your business is not like, there's other things that justify the fact that like that could be a risk. But if someone was just popped up and they were a year in the making and they're like saying all this stuff, my question would be, well, what happens if you don't stay in business? Well, then, my 3 to 4 day liquidity offer is only as good as your ability to provide that promise.
Exactly. And look, we're to me, the key thing is that we are an industry supplier, and we always will be. And as I said, that ratio of less than 25% of our inventory is owned by investors, and that will always that will go up. We can allow that to go up a little bit more, and because there's more and more demand coming through. But again, I couldn't recommend this if we didn't have that ability to liquidate for the client. There's absolutely no point otherwise. And the one other thing I can say with certainty is, just so people are aware, there is no other industry supplier in the world offering this option at this moment in time. That's a fact. So, interesting.
By the way, how many podcasts have you gone on in the United States talking about this?
2.
so I just want, is it possible that this is one of 2 podcasts so far to date that have shared this message? And so it's not like it's super, there's just nobody talking about this.
Nobody knows about it, Caleb. I tell you, actually, I tell a lie, it's 3, but I did one with MC, and I just did a second one with MC because I invited the CEO from Tradium from Germany and some metals. And so I did 2 just with MC and 1 with you.
Amazing.
And we're moving, again, like attracts like, and when MC mentioned you, I not that I wouldn't turn anybody away, but, we're moving sort of delicately as well. Do you know what I mean?
You have to. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your willingness to come on the show, be so transparent, and talk about this opportunity. And again, there's areas to make money all over the place. And I quite frankly just love this whole conversation. Is there anything that I didn't ask that would have been a mistake if we end the podcast right now and have not addressed? Is there anything else that you want to share? Is there anything you want to share before we?
I think we covered it all very, very well in terms of the time we had, because as I said at the beginning, it's the same paradigm as buying gold or silver, yet there's some very, very intricate security components of the transaction that people should know about. So I think, other than if somebody is interested, what I would do is sit down and go through more in detail gallium, indium, praseodymium, just so they know what industries and uses.
And there may be a world that we do a part 2, something more specific. So if people are like, hey, I want to learn more, we could send them to betterwealth.com/something with a individual video of you doing a deep dive. But for now, if people are like, I want to learn more, what is the best way to connect with you? I want to make it very clear that you're not a sponsor. We're not getting a kickback. It's just like, how do people reach out to you if they want to learn more?
My website is Strategic Metals Invest.
Okay.
They can go there and download a brochure and leave their phone number and email, and we'll follow up with a courtesy call or a courtesy email, or just email us directly, info@strategicmetalsinvest.com.
Okay. And guys, I would highly recommend if this of interest to you, um, say thank you in a way of providing interest. Thank you for coming on for the second official podcast in the United States. We really, really appreciate it. And I just appreciate you sharing this opportunity that until speaking with you, I knew of rare earths. I knew that there were people like I knew of it. I just didn't know that there was a way to participate in that investment. And I think majority of people would say, I see a world where we're if electric cars, if technology and solar panels, if those use rare earths along with like airplanes and all of that, I see a world where the demand's going to be uh, greater. If I was running for president today, I would definitely up our capacity in the United States because I don't love depending on other countries, especially China. So it's just it's interesting, and I think I've definitely learned a ton. And as you can see, I get excited talking to people like you that are just in a space that is incredible. So anything else you want to say before we? I ask another question that's not money related, but is there anything else that you want to say and how people can reach out to you? And any final thoughts?
No, just I've really enjoyed the conversation. You've a keen sort of insight and mind, I guess, to investing, where so you're able to hone in on what's important for the audience. So yeah, I'm very grateful, Caleb. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we might, see you in Europe, or I might see you in North America.
Listen, when my wife April listens to this, she's gonna already be looking at tickets for Europe. So it's only a matter of time. I can guarantee that. And yeah, we'll definitely be kept in the loop. And if there's enough demand, so please reach out to me, comment, let me know if you want to hear kind of a part two. We can do a deep dive in precious metals. I'm all about. It goes back to leverage. When you get 100 people reaching out to you, you're gonna wish we had a part two video, so you could say, "Watch part two," and if you really want to, talk to me, it saves a
Yeah.
ton of time. So, depending on the response, we might do a part two. My final question is nothing money related; it's all legacy related because the reason why we do this is, I think, for a bigger purpose than just making money and appreciating assets. It's the value that we bring just in our life and when we pass away. And so, my question is, if this is your last day on Earth and you were with the people that you love the most and you can't give them any precious metals or any podcast or anything that you've done, but you just have one last conversation, what are you going to make sure to highlight in that last conversation?
Wow. Wow. Great question. Um, I think, and I think you touched on it in the question, which is, I think we've all been given a great platform, you know, and we should be relieved and grateful and thankful. And just, just today, I mean, the effort you and your team put in to be here, the technology we have, and even the food we ate today. I mean, what it took to go from, where it began, and maybe in Africa or maybe South America. And we have fresh tropical fruit here in Tipperary. But so, yeah, just, I suppose we have been given this great platform, and all we need to do is to try to improve on it, you know. And one thing, the spiritual practice or dimension is very important to me, such as, I think, like, and I'm going to use the analogy of sort of, going to the gym and being fit. I think it's important to be physically fit, mentally fit, emotionally fit, and spiritually fit. And what I mean by that as well is, it's like, a chair has four legs. And what I believe to be true is, if you don't get the spiritual side right, and you touched on it as well, sure, this is business, but what's our deeper intention, amongst our own community and stuff like that. I think if you don't get the spiritual side right, you'll run into difficulties. Yeah. If you're just after the money or the fame or the power. But I think if you get the spiritual aspect, and spirituality to me is about humility and just, being honest with yourself about, finding out who you really are. And, I think most people I encounter are very sort of, they know what they want and they know what they're after, but do they know why? Do you know what I mean? So just that, yeah, that spiritual side is very, very important. And I think if we go down, if that's not right, but if it is right, everything else falls into place. You know what I mean? Which is great.
Couldn't say it any better, man. I 100% agree. And If you don't have a greater reason to why you do what you do, well, I think it's going to be life is going to be a lot less fulfilling, and you'll live and you'll
Yeah,
die, and
yeah,
500 years, no one's going to remember anything you've done. So
yeah.
there's got to be a bigger purpose than just our on Earth legacy.
Yeah, and one thing there, just I know you've gotten me onto my favorite subject, Caleb, which is spirituality and sort of. But you know as well, if you live in the spiritual realm, if you're sort of doing the right thing or trying to always do the next right thing, more is constantly being revealed. That's where you grow. Do you ever sort of, I don't know if you've ever experienced or you meet people where they don't feel like they're growing anywhere or they're stifled. It's because the spiritual realm is not, they're not living in there. If you're in the sunlight of the spirit, if you will, more is constantly being revealed. So you sort of don't have to really strive so much because it's sort of revealed to you,
Yeah. We could have part 3 because this is actually one thing. The Better Wealth audience hears a little bit of some of my philosophy, and like my faith obviously structures a lot of my business practices and all of that. But probably what I like to speak more than money is that, deeper reason, is faith, is frameworks, because I'm a fan of frameworks. I believe if you can't explain why you believe what you believe, then you're just based on feelings. And I do believe that your life will be better if there's a deeper meaning to it. And I don't believe it's just something made up. So that's a whole nother conversation. And
Sure.
but yeah, I again appreciate your time and appreciate you articulating this. Appreciate you taking hard questions, and we'll definitely have you back on. And I'm looking forward to hearing what the Better Wealth Nation thinks of this. And so with that, man, thank you. We'll make sure to put your contact info, your website, in the show notes and in the description, and look forward to future conversations.
Thank you very much, Caleb.
I want to thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoy our content, please like, share, subscribe. It helps other people find our channel, and we really, really appreciate it. I also want to let you know that we have this thing called the Better Wealth Efficiency Quiz, and our goal is to give you a wealth efficiency score in less than 3 minutes, and really highlight and get you to start thinking about the potential inefficiencies that you have in your life. So if you haven't taken the quiz, go check out, it'll be the link below. Check that link out, take the quiz, and then let us know your score.